Thanks, Dr. JB, for the opportunity. We just saw a not so simple one of an anti-uveitis causing so much of vision loss. Definitely an enigmatic intermediate uveitic. Probably Rima will tell us the diagnostic dilemma in posterior uveitic. But imagine like combining all these three things together and how much will be the risk to the vision in pan-uveitis. Probably you can have a threat to life also, but like at least let's deal with the utmost threat to vision in pan-uveitic conditions. Any pan-uveitic entity with ocular complaints, you make sure that whether it is pan-uveitic or not, you look at the ocular complaints, whether there is pain, redness, or floaters. The type of anterior uveitis can give a clue towards the diagnosis of the pan-uveitis, whether it's a granulomatous or non-granulomatous anterior uveitis. Predominant structure of the posterior segment involvement is primary importance to identify. Almost all pan-uveitic entities have systemic underlying systemic association or systemic features. So, and a contributory history will give you the clue. These are the features in the eye that can present. To make it more simpler with few examples, this is a 35-year-old female with blurred vision. This is a classical presentation of a disc edema with subretinal fluid and headache. Okay, this patient came with headache and meningismal signs and viral prodrome. This patient had Bichel, so we were dealing with an inflammatory condition. So fundus fluorescent angiogram confirmed a clinical suspicion of a Harada's disease. So this is a typical starry sky pattern or a Harada's pattern of a Oaks-Koenna Harada's disease. So usually in VKH initially presents as Harada's. A vision threat in this phase in VKH is mainly due to the disc involvement and the subretinal fluid and the exudative retinal detachment. So the important thing in pan-uveitis is how to prioritize your treatment based on which is going to be involved first and how it's going to affect your vision. So in this case, you start immediately planning a pulse therapy of high methyl prednisolone, followed by high dose steroids and later on immunomodulator therapy. Because the vision loss at this stage is because of the disc involvement and exudative retinal detachment. But VKH doesn't end there. VKH can come back with the granulomatous pan-uveitis, again can come back with the subretinal fluid pockets or exudative retinal attachment. So it's very important that you treat the anterior uveitis part also, add topical steroids. Oral steroids alone may not be enough. So VKH is one of the primary indication of primary immunosuppressive therapy. So you need to start immunosuppressive therapy as early as possible so that you don't end up with losing, so that the patient doesn't end up losing vision. VKH not always present so easily. The classical presentation is the exudative retinal detachment and the pan-uveitis. This is a young middle-aged female presenting with pain, redness, and sudden vision loss and headache. This patient presented with narrow angles with increased intraocular pressure. So remember that VKH can present with an angle closure glaucoma. A UBM and ultrasound confirm the diagnosis. A ciliary body swelling or rotation can be the initial presenting sign of VKH. So it's important that you don't miss a glaucomatous disc damage and or an anterior ischemic optic neuropathy because of the raised IOP in VKH. You feel like once you've treated with immunomodulatory therapy, there have been studies that show that it can even prevent sunset glow. A convalescent phase of VKH looks like this, clinically appears resolved, but when you look closely, look at the fovea, look at the macula, watch out for vision threat commonly from the macular edema. This is because of depigmentation and clumping. You can have some foveal stippling or RP atrophy, which all can cause vision loss. SSOCT and ICG seems to be helpful in picking up subtle activity even in sunset glow appearance in patients with VKH. So these are indications whether you need to add immunomodulatory therapy and probably an indication for a periocular steroid or titrating the systemic steroids as and when required. So vision loss in VKH can be in the acute phase or in the chronic stage because of the scarring, CNVM, or complicated cataract. Sometimes the demarcation line also can cause vision loss. They can even cause visual field loss and ERG changes. Some similar condition and more scary one is the sympathetic ophthalmia, which can also present with granulomatous reaction. The posterior segment presentation is almost very similar. You will have subtle subretinal fluid at the posterior pole. The other eye being injured is the give way. Remember that the patient can give complaints of near vision defects in these patients. And once you find subretinal fluid at the posterior pole, this is the only eye of the patient. Remember that you need to treat them aggressively and make sure that you give protective glasses for prevention of injury in the other eye also. IV methylprednisolone is the treatment initially, followed by steroids and immunomodulators. So a granulomatous pan-uveitis can be VKH or sympathetic ophthalmia, but if you have a granulomatous pan-uveitis with significant choroiditis and retinal vasculitis as the predominant involvement, then you're probably dealing with cases of TBI sarcoid. So we just had indications of TB sarcoid, how they present. They can present with granulomatous uveitis or intermediate uveitis, as Kalpana just said. At this stage, generally the vision loss is reversible. You can start off with topical or oral steroids and even periocular steroids if you rule out infection. You can actually wait for test reports of the treatment response in these cases. You can decide about ATT or IMT based on confirmation of diagnosis later, but not always in TB can you wait, because a macular involving subretinal abscess with subretinal fluid cannot wait. You need to confirm the diagnosis as early as possible and treat aggressively. If need be, you need to do a biopsy if ancillary investigations are not confirmatory. As we did in this case, this was a young patient with multiple subretinal granuloma all over. Subretinal abscess was suspected, but all the ancillary investigations for TB turned out to be negative. We went ahead and did an FNAC, which confirmed the diagnosis of MTB, and with ATD and steroids, it resolved very well. You might find that there is a scarring and there is a vision loss, but the other way, at least we could save the fovea and vision was restored. Macular involvement is very risky with respect to vision in TB. The important thing correspondingly in sarcoid is that when presence with disc granuloma or in disc edema. This needs emergency treatment, IV methylprednisolone and oral steroids. And once confirmed the diagnosis, methotrexate is the drug of choice. In spite of treatment, disc pallor can set in, but remember that central vision can be salvaged even though if there is some visual field loss. We were talking about this macula, vitreous, and all these things. When you are focusing on treatment of the primary panuveitic entity, there can be some side thing that can be happening, something like this CNVM, which you shouldn't miss off. So always look out for these things. Along with the systemic therapy, make sure that you pick up subtle CNVM. This is not so subtle. Anyway, we would have picked up in any case. Treat them with anti-VEGF appropriately. So TB sarcoid can involve disc, choroid, or macula, but remember that occlusive vasculitis can also cause retinal ischemia, leading to vision loss. If one disease you're thinking of, which is a non-granulomatous panuveitis with occlusive vasculitis, sometimes presenting with hypopyon, then you're dealing with Behçet's. This is a 35-year-old panuveitis with non-granulomatous uveitis presenting with vitritis. So we thought the vision loss in this patient is due to this media haze, vitritis, and anterior-chamber reaction. But then when you do FFA, you realize that the vision loss is something more because of the occlusive vasculitis, because of the capillary ferning. Sometimes, despite treatment, you might it might go on to disc optic atrophy because arteries and veins are involved. So it's very important that you pick up subtle hints. So, for example, look at this patient. This was referred to as intermediate uveitis with vague vitritis. So, luckily for us, we didn't miss the subtle hypopyon and the retinal picture of this, which was clinching. So, retinal involvement in Behçet's is the only is a giveaway. Is the only non-infective condition where you can get retinal involvement. FFA confirmed the diagnosis, and this patient is on biologicals now. Vision loss in Behçet's can be progressive because of the CNP areas and macular ischemia. Look at this dye; it doesn't seem to be interested in flowing further at all. It refuses to flow further, and we did laser, and after the cataract surgery, vision was still maintained. So it's not always gloomy. Sometimes, if you treat it appropriately, you can still salvage some vision. So not just macular ischemia. This is a young patient in from Middle East who was already on biologicals. A patient of Behçet's came with increased cystoid macular edema. This we had to treat with IVMP and hiking up oral steroids. So on and off, you need to treat the acute exacerbation with steroids or biologicals, but always maintain them on long-term immunomodulators. So if you have a retinal involvement in Behçet's, but what if you have a panuveitis with predominantly retinitis? The equivalent disease in the infective part for Behçet's is acute retinal necrosis. This is an elderly male, a patient with renal hepatic disease. We saw the ARN-like lesion in the periphery. Remember, there are some sclerosed vessels this side also. Interestingly, at this stage, patient may still have moderate to good vision. So at the most, they may have floaters. They may not have at most vision loss. But you can't get away with this. Don't make sure that you cover all the bases. This was treated with emergency parenteral antivirals and oral steroids, and this was a response. But it's not always so typical, because this is one patient where the fovea was threatened and we had to do an anterior chamber tap because of the atypical presentation, and it turned out to be PCR HSV positive. So in these cases where there is fovea threatening or into the macula encroaching retinitis lesions, we can augment the systemic antiviral with intravitreal ganciclovir, which is a very good option and acts faster. So necrotizing retinitis, you will have to be always on your toes, because it doesn't give you any relaxation. It can give you, it can come back with breaks and RD or a macular ischemia, or the retinitis can involve the disc or cause optic atrophy. So always make sure that you treat them up with appropriate systemic acyclovir for adequate dose, augment with intravitreal antivirals, and be ready for operating. The another infective entity presenting often with pan-uveitis is syphilis, always a disease of exclusion. RP or TPH titers are suggestive. This was diagnosed post vitrectomy, and this was a HIV patient, so we could make a diagnosis. Pan-uveitis can sometimes be associated with other systemic conditions. The most important among them is JAA, as was clearly spoken. BSK, cataract, are significant visual handicaps. Remember that amblyopia is most important.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. We are just running out of time, so you can go towards the conclusion for your session.
Almost always remember that beware of the cheats. Masquerade is one thing that you need to be worried about. So to conclude, common panuveitic entities with predominant vasculitis is Behçet's. If it is choroiditis, is TB. If it is retinitis, it is viral or ARN. Hypopion panuveitis is Behçet's, and with exudative RD, it is VKH. So remember that almost always they are associated with systemic diseases, and monitor the underlying disease gives you a good thing. Remember that every reactivation needn't be panuveitic. It can present with any of these combinations. Thank you.